To what extent is manipulating nature and cloning humans ethical?
In Psalm 103, it says, "Know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who made us, and we are His. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture." In the verse, it says that God is the one who made us, and when we're trying to clone people, we're trying to imitate God's work, which obviously we can't do because we're not God.
What do you think of people who clone their dead loved ones?
When someone loses a loved one, they feel pain, but it can be relieved by the grace of God and not by cloning an identical person. And it says in Ecclesiastes 8:8, "No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death."
If cloning becomes error-free, do you think cloning humans is acceptable? Some people say cloning is wrong because errors can kill embryos. What do you think?
If it isn't God's plan, then I think it's meant to be. But for me, I still think that it's socially unacceptable because it will alter God's creation and we will no longer be unique and in His image.
So you've asked me whether cloning humans is ethical. And my immediate response is, good God, no. So not only is it illegal, okay, you know what, on second thought, it's probably not even a matter of legality. There is no laws in place, I believe, in Canada that actually do go after it. But in terms of ethics, I believe God put in process a method that works quite well without any test tubes involved or any type of scientific intervention. So I'm quite happy to leave it the way God made it.
What do you think of people who clone their dead loved ones?
Well, I think that ethically we have a bit of an issue because if you consider the first sheep that was cloned, do you guys know how long it took to clone the first sheep? How many failed attempts?
To Dolly?
Dolly. There was over 270 failed attempts. So you have to consider that they probably had a fairly large number of live animals that were severely ill or physically, I think, probably affected, and with, if not even considering disease. So the complexity of cloning a sheep is one thing, and then you add to that the complexity of cloning a human. Can you imagine how many errors they would have to make? How many humans wouldn't live past even being born, let alone a few months or a few years of birth with complications of disease? So that would be one ethical concern, is just playing around with human life. Discarding human life if there were failed attempts. What else could I add to that? I think ethically, there's no guarantee genetically that it would be the same person. You might look the same, you might have the same DNA, but you could end up with somebody who's, you know, got a significantly different personality or characteristics. It's not going to replace your loved one. And my question would also be whether or not that person is genuinely a person with a soul and a spirit and morality if they're simply cloned. So those would be my thoughts.
If cloning becomes error-free, do you think cloning humans is acceptable?
I think you'd have to distinguish between different types of cloning and what you're cloning for. You know, one of the sort of common things that we talk about with cloning is basically cloning for the purpose of creating tissues or organs that we could then use ourselves later in life. If you consider a clone to be human, then that would, you know, the idea of creating another human being for your own benefit, that seems a little bit unethical to me. On the flip side, if we're creating clones for reproduction, we have to ask ourselves the question, is a clone, are you just a bag of cells essentially? Would a clone actually be human, or is there more to our humanity than just biochemistry? So if I created a clone of myself, would that actually be a unique individual? Would it actually be a human at all? I don't know the answer to that because we've not gotten very far in that technology.